Good evening, everybody. It is January 12th, 2022. I'm not used to saying that yet. Seems like the beginning of 2021 was just yesterday. Well, I have an article here and maybe one more if time allots for you guys today, and they're starting to pick it up. They're really starting to pick it up. I seen this a couple years ago. They were doing a exercise called Robin Sage, and it was basically this scenario, but this is a little bit more in detail. Check this out. And if this doesn't show people who they are training to fight, then there's no hope for you. If you can't understand like what they're training against guerrilla warfare on US soil so they can go fight people in caves in Afghanistan, come on. That's always been a lie. You know who they're going to fight. And it's you, it's me, it's your neighbor, it's your daughter, it's your father, it's your son, it's your aunt, it's your uncle, it's all of us. That's what the point of this entire operation is. Guerrilla war exercise to be fought across rural North Carolina counties. Army warns. Oh, so there you go. A realistic, notice how it's in quotations, guerrilla war will be fought across 24 North Carolina counties in the coming weeks, with young soldiers battling seasoned freedom fighters, according to the U.S. Army. Huh. Seems like they're gearing up for treason, because that's literally what this is. This is literally treason. The 2-week unconventional warfare exercise, yeah, it is unconventional warfare because they're not going to be abiding by regular war laws. They're not going to be abiding by the Geneva Convention. They're not going to be abiding by any of that. Will be staged January 22nd to February 4th on privately owned land. Who lets these people do this? And who privately owns this land? I'd be willing to bet Department of Defense owns this land. And it will be realistic enough to include the sounds of gunfire, blanks, and flares, U.S. Army John F. Kennedy Special Warfare Center and School said in a news release. Huh. And that looks like, nope, not the end of that one. Exact times, locations, and exercise specifics were not provided. Oh, isn't that lovely? So how do we know this is just an exercise? However, advanced publicity is intended to make sure civilians, including law enforcement officers, don't mistake the fighting for terrorism or criminal activity, which has happened in the past. Residents may hear blank gunfire and see occasional flares. Controls are in place to ensure there is no risk to persons or property, the Warfare Center said. Residents with concerns should contact local law enforcement officials, who will immediately contact exercise control officials. For the U.S. Army John F. Kennedy Special Warfare Center, and school safety is always the command's top priority during all training events. And they gave it the same name, called Robin Sage. The exercise serves as a final test for Special Forces Qualification Course training and places candidates in a politically unstable country known as Pineland. What does this sound like? And when these young guys are going out here to do this, what do they think they are doing? The candidates face off against seasoned service members from units across Fort Bragg, as well as specially trained civilians, officials said. The setting is characterized by armed conflict, forcing the students to solve problems in a real-world setting, the center says. Quote, these military members act as realistic opposing forces and guerrilla freedom fighters, also known as Pineland Resistance Movement, the center said. To add realism to the exercise, civilian volunteers throughout the state act as role players. Participation by these volunteers is crucial to the success of this training, and past trainees attest to the realism they add to the exercise. Well, here's something for you. Why would you want to sign up for this? I wouldn't go out of my way to sign up for their treason games or whatever they're doing here. Like, you got to be crazy. You got to be crazy to sign up for your demise. That's literally what you're doing. You are signing up to train, to help train the military to combat you. I mean, come on, it doesn't get more blatant than this. Advance public notice of the U.S. military's premier unconventional warfare exercise became a priority in 2002 after one soldier was killed and another wounded when a Moore County Sheriff's deputy mistook Robin Sage exercises for criminal activity. Huh. Well, if the shoe fits, right? It basically is criminal activity. It's treason. You are training to fight the American population, though you say you're not. Everything has to do with that. That's where you're setting up in America and one of our states in multiple of North Carolina counties using American citizens and acting like, freedom fighters. Come on. Pineland covers counties primarily in southeastern North Carolina, as well as Chesterfield, Dillon, and Marlborough counties in South Carolina. The full list: North Carolina, Alamance, Anson, Bladen, Brunswick, Cabras, Chatham, Columbus, Cumberland, Davidson, Guilford, and I think it's Gifford, actually. I think the L was silent on that. Harnett, Hoke, Lee, Montgomery, Moore, New Hanover, Randolph, Richmond, Robeson, Rowan, Sampson, Scotland, Stanley, Union, and Wake. Okay. All Robin Sage movements and events have been coordinated with public safety officials throughout and within the towns and counties hosting the training. Officials said, among the safety protocols implemented, formal written notification to the chiefs of law enforcement agencies in the affected counties with a follow-up visit from a unit representative. All civilian and non-student military participants are briefed on procedures to follow if there is a contact with law enforcement officials. Students will only wear civilian clothes as the situation warrants, as determined by the instructors, and will wear a distinctive brown armband during these instances. Training areas and vehicles used during exercises are clearly labeled. And this, of course, is stupid ads. This is January 11th, 2022, so this is coming up. So if you live in any of those counties that I just named, you need to get out while this is going on, because this is not good for anybody, especially during this time. So they're going to be out there and they're going to be training to fight guerrilla warfare against us. It's literally what this is. And people are just okay with this. Absolutely ridiculous. Let me see what else I have. Okay, here we are over at End Time Headlines. Time is running out for anti-vaxxers. Many are capitulating under increased pressure. And you want to know something? Just found out today that my job is probably going to be enforcing the mandate. It's in the Supreme Court right now, apparently, and they said they will be required by law, even though it's an executive order that never went to the House, never went to the Senate, was never signed by the president after all that and public scrutiny and the whole nine. It was never subject to any of that. It was executive order written up, and the only reason it was challenged in the Supreme Court is because the people made a big stink about it, and they needed to get us to shut up. So, I will be opposing that to my best ability, most definitely, starting with the religious exemption. Okay, and it says opinion. Republican governors in the United States may be championing the cause of the vaccine resistance and suing to stop mandates imposed by the Biden administration, but elsewhere in the West, the jabless are increasingly becoming personae non gratae. MSN News is reporting that the Omicron variant is exacting some of the highest infection rates of the situation, and the growing frustration of the vaccinated majority in the West against its unvaccinated minority is reaching a crescendo. In some countries, studies suggest Omicron causes milder symptoms. So you see how they do this? This came straight from the mainstream news. You see how they do this? Like, oh, the vaccinated are the majority. And it's vaccinated versus unvaccinated, Republican versus Democrat. They need you fighting. So you're never, ever, ever paying attention to the truth that is so close. You could literally taste it. You could taste it. It is that close. Many people will never come to the truth, ever, in their whole life. They will sit there and they will make excuse after excuse after excuse for the tyrannical state, because that is how they were taught. That is how they were beaten down. That is how they were, well, brainwashed into believing. Hegelian dialectic works. Especially most people alive now, actually everybody alive, has been under some form of mind control, propaganda, social engineering since birth. So none of us know. Yeah. None of us know, you know. Anyway, even so, the unvaccinated, at least those without valid medical reasons, are being blamed for overburdening hospitals by putting themselves and society at risk. Of course. In Florida, for instance, Governor Ron DeSantis signed a law that barred companies and schools from insisting all their employees be vaccinated. Within the week, Disney halted its vaccine requirement for Walt Disney World workers. Compare that to the stance of French President Emmanuel Macron, who vowed less than tactful language last week to make the life of the unvaccinated a living hell. My whole thing is, I'm not going to read too much of this. You guys basically get it. I'm just going to probably read the next paragraph and talk. But basically, pushback from political foes wasn't enough to derail Macron's plan to shrink the world of the unvaccinated. The Washington Post stated that an overwhelming 214 to 93 vote, French Parliament approved his bid to remove a loophole that allowed the unvaccinated to get around French health restrictions on dining at cafes, riding trains, and going to the movies, providing a negative C test. Now it's take the jab or sip your champagne at home. At the same time, the world grew for the vaccinated in France. Self-isolation times for those with full vaccine doses who test positive, Macron's government said would drop from 10 days to 7 on Monday and 5 days with a negative test result. So, check this out. Quote, when some make from their freedom a motto, not only do they put others' lives at risk, but they are also curtailing others' freedom. That I cannot accept, he told reporters in Paris on Friday. When you're a citizen, you must agree to do your civic duty. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? So, to these people, and even people who are, on the ground like us, they're okay with taking everything you have away, your health care, your ability to feed your family, your ability to make money, your ability to move around as you want in a supposed free country, your ability to, go out and enjoy the society that is here for you, that we all collectively built before it was taken over, of course. They're okay with all of that. They don't see that as you're hindering other people, but you don't take something and you're hindering other people even though they have no proof that you are. You could get somebody sick. I've not gotten anybody sick. Not at all. Oh, you don't know that. No, I do know that because guess what? I'm around a lot of people, and guess what? None of them have ever gotten sick from me. So there's that right out the window. At least on theirs, I can prove that they are hindering people just by what they say. You shouldn't be able to drive a car. You shouldn't be able to go to the hospital. You shouldn't be able to do this. You shouldn't be able to do that. That effect that these people are arguing for, that is worse than any virus that would ever come over here and do anything. What these people are doing, society has already been unraveled with the help of the useless eaters, the lemmings, the sheeple, whatever you want to call them. With their permission and the majority's permission, under manufactured consent, of course, they were able to just bring in the New World Order, set it up, and let the chips fall where they may. And people are literally out there killing each other over forwarding this out of fear. Fear that they might not be able to do whatever. Fear that they, I'm not going to get to have my freedom. Like, first of all, if you're relying on someone to give you freedom, you're not free. God bless you all.